What is it like being Captain America? Do eagles fly overhead wherever you go?
No offense to John Walker, but... Wait, no, all the offense to John Walker. He's besmirching Captain America's good name by doing things like giving the shield a fresh new red paint job. He's not the one who should be wielding the shield and the title.
You don't want to do this.
Yeah, we do.
But who else could? Well, let's look today at all the characters who have been Captain America, or have gotten pretty close in the past.
Costume's a bit much. So tight. With the confidence.
I think everyone here would make a better choice, right? Let's discuss right now.
The legacy of that shield is complicated.
If you don't know that Sam Wilson becomes Captain America, what, have you been living under a rock or something? It's kind of a big deal. Let's just stick to the MCU for a second. I know I personally was totally against Steve giving Sam the shield to continue the Captain America legacy in Endgame. I know there's a ton of comic history that shows why Sam deserves the shield and the moniker, but I just didn't think the MCU had really proven why Sam deserved it, especially over Bucky, who was standing like 10 feet away.
Go ahead.
And who I thought would be a perfect replacement. But I'm sure, like a lot of the doubters, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show proved why Sam is the right choice to be the new Captain America. The show definitely took its time, but by episode 5, everything became clear and Sam was finally ready to take up the shield and do things his way.
You gotta give me the shield, man.
Now I'm just torn. I sorta wish I could have seen Sam as Captain America right away because that's awesome. But I also understand the build-up to really understand the weight of the choice he's making. Now I just hope Sam's Captain America can stick around long-term in the MCU. As I mentioned, I've come to terms with the fact that Bucky Barnes will never be Captain America in the MCU.
Stop the car!
My reasoning for wanting him to have the shield was because, 1, he's already a super soldier very similar to Steve. 2, I thought it would be a great way for him to atone for his past actions and reclaim his identity as a patriotic hero like he was in World War II. In my head, that was perfect. But then the Falcon and the Winter Soldier dashed both of those points. For one, you don't need to be a super soldier to be Captain America, since I guess anyone can throw that shield with enough force and accuracy to do damage, so that's not special. And Bucky needed to grow to be his own person and not do things in the shadow of Captain America. So having him take the shield just didn't make that much sense.
Maybe he was wrong about you, and if he was wrong about you, then he was wrong about me.
But maybe I'm biased from the comics too. After Steve Rogers' death in the comics, it was Bucky who originally took up the shield and the mantle to be the next Captain America, and there were a ton of stories about how Bucky worked to gain the trust of the American people, as well as his other Avengers, to escape his Winter Soldier past. So if you're itching to see that storyline instead of the one we have in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show, be sure to go read a comic book.
I was just fascinated by this.
Was anyone else just completely blown away by the Marvel's What If series that's going to air on Disney+? The animation style and its stories are just going to shake up the MCU. It's going to be a blast. One of the most buzzed about What If stories we have in the pipeline is that what if Peggy Carter became Captain America instead of Steve? There is comic precedent for this. On Earth 86315, in the Exiles comic series, Peggy took part in the program after Steve died, allowing her to become the new Captain America. Now, technically, she probably couldn't be Captain America because, you know, the whole British thing.
What's with the accent, Queen Victoria?
But she'd at least come to represent every ideal that Steve stood for, just as Captain Britain. But that does open the door for some intriguing possibilities, don't you think? If Peggy was the one to have been frozen and unthawed 70 years later, what would the MCU look like? Because Peggy was a huge influence on the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., so by taking her out of the timeline like that, who knows what would have happened? Okay, although Spider-Man has never been Captain America in the comics, how wild would it be if all of a sudden Tom Holland's Peter Parker decided he wanted to throw his hat in the ring to be the new Captain America? Picture this. After the cliffhanger at the end of Far From Home, Peter decides that he still wants to be a superhero, but can't be Spider-Man anymore.
What just happened?
With his agility and his strength, the best hero to copy would be Captain America, so he creates a new costume and a new type of shield in order to become like Captain America Jr., or like Captain New York if he wants to think small scale. Feasible? Absolutely not. But is it a fun idea to think about? Yeah, I mean, just look at how good Spidey looked the very first time we saw him suited up in the MCU. He stole the shield right out from Captain America's hand and then held it at his side for one glorious moment. Maybe that was foreshadowing. Nah, it wasn't, but all I'm saying is that when there's another huge fight about who should be the next Captain America after Sam ages out of the part, then Peter Parker should be the first one you contact. Up until the start of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we all thought things were pretty clear-cut. Steve Rogers was the only successful super soldier, and the legacy of the Captain America mantle was something to be proud of. But of course, we soon learned the dark truth.
Steve didn't know about him?
He didn't. I didn't tell him.
So you're telling me?
Meet Isaiah Bradley. His story in the MCU is horrifying and digs into America's troubled past and dark side. Bradley was just one of a multitude of African American soldiers who were experimented on with different versions of the super soldier serum. Isaiah was the only survivor, and his reward for fighting for the US military was to be captured and experimented on for years, until he was able to fake his death. In the comics, his backstory is relatively similar. He was experimented on and tasked with thwarting the German forces from recreating the serum. His final mission in the comics actually had him wear the Captain America uniform and shield, and then he was later sentenced to life in prison for stealing. Tragic stuff. He was a very short-lived Captain America, but you can tell how much his country hurt him just because of the color of his skin. Alright, what's better than Steve Rogers Captain America? How about a Captain America with both Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter's DNA? Meet Shaon Rogers, the daughter of Steve and Peggy, who would eventually be both an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Captain America. Not too shabby. Sharon comes from a comic series where Cap never becomes a popsicle. After her parents retire from active service, Sharon keeps on fighting. And she kicks a lot of butt in her fancy futuristic armor that obviously takes cues from Father's iconic uniform. I know it's a lot to ask for the MCU, but if we ever get a clear answer on whether Captain America created a new timeline or was in our timeline the whole time, it might be cool to see an alternate timeline where Shaon Rogers grows up and becomes a hero. On the surface, you would think the patriotic and justice-loving symbol Captain America and the darker, more violent anti-hero, the Punisher, don't have a whole lot in common and don't see eye to eye. But that's actually not entirely true. In actuality, Frank Castle really admires Steve Rogers and what Captain America represents. Sure, their methods are different, but what they're fighting for remains the same. And there were actually 2 instances where Frank Castle either suited up as Captain America or tried to imitate him. In a specific What If comic series, we see the Punisher serving up his brand of justice but as Captain America. Fun stuff. But then also in our main universe, there was a time where Castle changed his costume to be more like Captain America. But yeah, that didn't last too long. We've actually seen Jeffrey Mace in the MCU before. He appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a show that initially started off as a branch of the MCU, but then as time went on, started separating itself more and more until the timeline just didn't make sense. And now, we don't talk about it anymore. But Jeffrey Mace showed up as the replacement director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and although he seemed a little shady at first, he lived up to his moniker, which was the Patriot. He really did want to help people and stand for all those patriotic ideals and whatnot. So it makes sense, given his Patriot name, that he would pick up the shield and become Captain America in a time where Steve was gone. It certainly fit him well. Well, not all of these Captain Americas are straight heroes. There's bound to be a few bad apples every now and then. So let's talk a second about William Burnside. He was actually the 4th Captain America, but things didn't turn out so well for him. He was obsessed with Steve Rogers and wanted to be like him. Now you might think this would include hanging pictures of him on his wall or something, but Burnside took it a step farther. He ended up receiving an altered version of the super soldier serum, and then even changed his appearance so he would look exactly like Steve Rogers. Yeah, that's kind of creepy. And as we all know, the super soldier serum tends to unlock what's already inside.
The serum amplifies everything that is inside, so good becomes great. Bad becomes worse.
So this twisted obsessed copycat quickly became more of a creepy obsessed copycat. Just like how not all new Captain Americas were good, not all of them lived to tell the tale. That's the fate of the poor Roscoe Simons, who only briefly put on the Captain America costume for 5 issues in the 70s. After Steve gave up the shield and became Nomad, Roscoe stepped up after other potential candidates failed. But although he was a solid hero, he was very soon killed by Red Skull. This act is what drove Steve Rogers to pick up the shield and reclaim his Captain America role. And here's a fun Easter egg. In Endgame, when Steve steals army clothes to infiltrate the base, the name on the clothes says Roscoe. Coincidence? I think not. Is it a little dark for Cap to be wearing the name of a dead Captain America? Maybe. As we know, there's a ton of alternate universes out there. An infinite number, some would say, and it's likely that every variation of every hero exists out there on a planet Earth somewhere. So let's take a jump over to Earth 65, which is the Earth Spider-Gwen comes from. In this universe, Samantha Wilson actually becomes Captain America. Miss Wilson was a student turned soldier during World War II, and was approached by Peggy Carter to be the subject of Project Rebirth. And a lot of her history unfolded the same way, with Samantha taking on the likes of Red Skull, Arnim Zola, Baron Zemo, and all that jazz. Cool stuff. Man, has the child of two superheroes ever grown up to not be a superhero? Like, do any of them ever grow up to be like an accountant or a banker or something like that? I'm not sure. But I know the pattern at least continues with Danielle Cage, who was the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. This is another example of a hero from a different universe, so it doesn't exactly break any canon to say she grew up to be Captain America. What's interesting about Danielle, though, is that she's one of the rare Captain Americas who did not receive her powers. Nope, this time it was all genetics. That's what you get when you have two super strong parents, right? I mean, I'll say it. Can Steve Rogers just come back as Captain America? Sure, he's bingo and tapioca age right now, but I still bet he could kick John Walker's butt, don't you think?